Hi, my name is Chris from Pieces of the Ocean, and today we're going to talk about my approach and ideologies in coral keeping. We all tend to do things differently, and it's pretty hard to gather all the information and execute results. There's many ways to do them. We're always open to trying new things. Hopefully, you could take what you learn or see here today, and you could tailor it to your own style of reef keeping. My love for the hobby started when I was 15. We had an aquarium store close by that they had a 500-gallon shark tank. And every Sunday you would go there and they would feed the sharks for you at noon. That kind of got me excited. My father bought me my first tank. You start with a nano tank and then 1, 2, 3, and then you wind up with plenty of tanks to go around. And over time, I learned to try to limit the amount of tanks I have. You want to limit the amount of maintenance. You want to limit the amount of equipment, because with more equipment becomes more problems. Everybody has a tank that's personal and accustomed to them and how they do things. I guess my philosophy in reefing is to make everything as easy as you can, because in 2, 3, 4 years from now, you're more likely to do it. Water changes, I do 20% every week. In about a month and a half time, almost all of my water is brand new. It doesn't give issues time to show its face. I've always ran a skimmer, I've always ran socks, I've always ran a UV. I've never ran a refugium. I happen to not like the detritus. After time, if you disturb it, you could cause a lot of issues in your reef. Some of the tanks here have quite the amount of detritus in them, and they do almost better than how my tanks do here at the store. All right, so here's our display at the shop. I take care of this tank. It's a 300-gallon Reef Savvy. This tank's been set up since March. I started with live rock, a little bit of dry rock, and I contribute that to most of the success here. If you take a look closely, you can see there's tons of growth on the Acropora. The torches are nice and fluffy, the euphyllia are nice and happy, the fish are nice and healthy. I mean, you can see how simple it is. There's not many wires, there's not many points of failure. All I do is I run calc glosser, protein skimmer. Here and there, I'll use a filter sock. More or less, if the tank looks a little cloudy, I'll throw in the felt socks. Normally, I use the mesh, the UV sterilizer, and the calcium reactor. Other than that, this tank does 20% of water changes every week, and I will continue to do that until this tank, outgrows its environment. If one thing this hobby taught me is definitely patience. The tank here I set up in March, and I started with live rock. If I had used dry rock, it would have been over. I'd still be waiting to put Acropora in there, maybe some other corals. It probably wouldn't have handled the fish load that I have now either. I added all these fish almost immediately in the first 2 weeks. Definitely for the beginners is, like what I said before, is make it easy or it's going to be a burden. You want to make water changes as easy as you can. At home, I have a drain. I turn one valve to drain. I do run a hose from my closet. That's only because I want to stay in touch with my tank and how things work. Otherwise, I'd turn 2 valves, do a water change every week. All I have to do is dump the salt in. You want patience. A lot of hobbyists, they come in, they're impatient, they're buying all these corals, and they're not dipping, they're not quarantining. You have to wait a quite amount of time in order for your tank stability to reach its median. In a hobby that's constantly evolving in terms of equipment and different ideologies, you want to keep everything the same. Every time you make even a little change, you change a pump, a skimmer, you throw off that balance inside your water, sometimes causing more pain or more growth. I personally have the same return pump for the last 8 years. I've never changed. I have the same type of skimmer. I just bought a new skimmer over and over again. Never added a refugium. I never added anything other than 2-part and extra pumps. Fortunately, we have forums like Reef to Reef. You have your local forums. And here in New York, it's Manhattan Reefs. We have tons of information at our fingertips. We have Instagram, we have Facebook. I guess we try to make sense of all the information that's out there. You know, some people use trace elements. Since I set up my systems here at the store and at home, I've never, other than the occasional potassium or iodine, I've never used trace elements. Personally, I think it's the water changes in the calcium reactor that keep up all my elements, minor and macro. Or you could not do water changes at all and do the trace elements. What's nice about the store is we tried things here. We tried the new Stratton lights. We tried flatworm stop. You know, it's always an improvement, but as long as you take it slow and be patient with it and not rush anything and, you know, keep it simple, eventually you'll probably run into more success. So here's another one of our display tanks. Kenny takes care of the system. Same thing, runs a calcium reactor and kalkwasser, a beautiful Bubble King protein skimmer. We got a Refugium Apex system. We got an extra Reef Bright here for a little bit more spread. Got the Radeon Gen 6 above. But the difference between me and Kenny and a lot of the other systems in the store is he packs his tank with fish. When you have a lot of fish, you kind of need all this to achieve results, especially acropora color and growth. But what you can see here is it's very similar to our other tanks in the shop in terms of, you know, health. Everything's healthy. As you can see, the approach is a bit different, and yet the corals all look great. So here's another one of our displays. This tank's an Elos 200 gallon. As you can see, we just run a skimmer and some calc. We use some lanthanum chloride, and our LPS love it. This tank, I believe, gets water changes every week, about 10%. We run some Radeons on top. A little bit of maintenance, and that's all it takes. This tank's been up for 4 years. Everything's thriving. Most of this stuff we grew from little frags in here. So it's a working tank, so we grow a lot of chalices in here. They supply most of our frags. This is kind of our brood stock for LPS. As you can see, there's barely anything here. It's just the calc skimmer and lanthanum chloride. What definitely sets this system apart than others is we have tons of fish in here. We feed tons of food. We have tons of light. I think Kenny has the Radeon set to 100%. Most of the acropora are around 500 to 600 par. And we could achieve colors on this Walt Disney like we can anywhere else in the store. I think one of the biggest challenges is fish aggression. Fish tend to not really like each other too often. So you got to select the appropriate fish before actually buying them. A lot of fish, they live in one place their whole life. But then some of the tanks, they swim thousands of miles a week. And you're not going to want to put one of those fish in a 40-gallon breeder without repercussion. Another challenge that I faced is something like dinoflagellates or cyanobacteria. There's not really a cure for them. There's a lot of things that you can see online on the forums, adding more water flow, or there's people dosing bleach. But at the end of the day, if you just siphon it all out, you run a filter stock, you run a UV, that's how I eliminated it. That's how I do it here at the store. Also, another issue is definitely pests. What you want to do is definitely quarantine your corals. I was quarantining emerald crabs and hermit crabs the first couple of years of the hobby for me. Even though it's a lot of work in the beginning, it's only a month in a quarantine tank with some medication. It's really not that bad. It saves you years of pain. You don't want to harm your animals, you know. A lot of people get in the hobby. They stock their tank full of fish, they grab something from Petco, and then they wipe out their whole tank. If you dip your corals, then you don't have to deal with pests, you know? I have to do Interceptor every 6 months. I do it as a prophylactic, but if I had red bugs or any of that stuff, you have to dose medication. The same with things like bryopsis. There's planaria, there's crabs, there's all the fun stuff that you have that come in on corals that if you don't dip in the beginning, then you gotta fight. I mean, look where I am. I made a career out of it. This is one of the best things that I could ever work for, you know? I worked hard to get here. I'm not leaving anytime soon. I'm gonna take the hobby with me for a long time, at least until I can't do it anymore. It's definitely one of the most rewarding things is to, you know, live up to your dream. I guess my memorable moment would be bringing my latest tank over the Verrazano Bridge. I took a picture of it on the back of the trailer, and that's what started the journey. That journey got me here today. My tank is definitely a reflection of my ideology. I put a lot of hard work into it. You spend a lot of time in this hobby. It teaches you a lot of patience, and it can bring you to here. And it can bring you to the store, and ultimately, at the end of the day, we're just trying to keep corals happy and healthy. I guess over time, my long-term goal would to be, have everything grow in, but it's always a work in progress. After the corals get big, you kind of want to prune them down. You want to keep everything clean. You want to keep everything from fighting. This is what our future plans here. We got a couple new tanks set up. We got to get them filled up, especially with a new variety of Acropora. Acropora is definitely our biggest game here at the shop. At the end of the day, we, as people, we always do things differently. From tank to tank, it's never going to be the same. You're never going to have the same equipment. You're never going to have the same fish. No matter how hard you try, or if you use the same equipment, the same routine, every system's always going to run differently. Your corals are always going to tell you a different story. What we want to do is we want to learn from each other and gather all that information and try to tailor it personally to yourself. Keep an open mind. If you like more content, like and subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to shoot us an email or comment in the comment section below.